It's summertime, and you know what that means. Time to fire up that grill, cook some hot dogs, and crack a couple of cold ones with the homies. Beer and wine have been a popular choice for such occasions, but recently a certain type of beverage has been making a small comeback. Alcopops have recently seen a growing surge in popularity, especially among younger demographics. But what is Alcopop? Alcopop is defined as being a pre-mixed drink, typically fruit-flavored or mixed with soda, often sold in a single-serving bottle or can. You've probably seen these in your local store, Instagram feed, or your parents' private refrigerator. But why are they popular now, and why did they fall off before? Well, to understand that question, we have to look back at the 1980s, during the wine cooler boom. In the mid-1980s, wine coolers, fruit juices mixed with wine, and then a generous helping of sugar made up nearly a fifth of all wine sold in the United States. And then, sales completely collapsed. And the reason wasn't because it sounded like a crappy drink you'd probably buy on Bourbon Street in New Orleans, it was because of tax. In January 1991, the federal government raised the exercise of taxes on wine from 17 cents a gallon to $1.07. Wine coolers have only ever been viable because wine was so cheap to tax. With that gone, prices soared and demand cratered. But the sales numbers had already proven something. People were thirsty for a sweet, low-strength, ready-to-drink, alcoholic beverage. And it was only a matter of time before someone figured out how to meet this demand. And the next evolution in pre-mixed drinks came from the land down under. In 1993, a local brewery owner named Duncan McGilvoray was drinking at a pub with some friends.
So the kid's father says to him, "Why do you ask? Two dogs fucking?"
Wow, great story, Mark. How's your lemon farm going?
Honestly, it's not going too great. A lot of my lemons are too big to sell. I have a whole bunch of them sitting in the back of my car, and I don't know what I'm going to do with them.
Hey, if you're not going to sell those lemons, maybe I can take them off your hands.
Alright, sure. Yeah, take my keys. Lemons are in the back of the trunk. Help yourself.
Duncan experimented with the lemons, and what he produced changed the entire drinking landscape. The first ever hard lemonade was created. Two Dogs was a huge commercial success, and by 1996 it had hit $150 million in annual global revenue. Large liquor companies looked on and were eager to cash in on the growing trend of alternative beverages. And they knew that if they wanted to compete, then they needed to adapt their products. And one of the ways they did this was by using a clever loophole to disguise their drinks. Instead of using wine as the primary ingredient, they used malt instead, essentially transforming their wine coolers into a fruit-flavored beer. This change served two purposes. Rather than paying the increased taxes on wine and spirits, they would instead be paying the reduced taxes on beer-labeled products. And secondly, since beer isn't as regulated as other forms of alcohol, the rules for marketing their products were far more relaxed, allowing them to advertise to a much wider audience. Of course, not all brands had to convert over. For instance, spirit-based drinks like Bacardi Breezer didn't rely solely on the US market, and would pay the higher fee on spirits, but also managed it by marketing their product as a premium alternative. Other popular brands in the early 90s included Hooper's Hooch and Zima. Towards the later half of the decade, you had brands like Smirnoff Ice and Mark's Hard Lemonade hit the store shelves as well. The Alcopop craze had quickly become the fastest growing beverage trend in America, as well as in the UK and in Australia. And a major factor in Alcopop's success was in its clever marketing. Unlike traditional wine or beer, these products were heavily marketed to a younger audience, and they utilized vibrant aesthetics and bright colors in their packaging, and emphasized that they were the drink of choice for fun-loving partygoers who didn't mind the massive headache that they would receive the next day. And while the Alcopop party continued to rage on through the turn of the millennium, some people started to notice a rather unsettling trend. Alcohol companies were pouring tens of millions of dollars into winning over young drinkers. Diageo, the owners of Smirnoff Ice, spent nearly $40 million on advertising in 2001 alone, and they spent an additional $50 million in the year after. Television, radio, magazines, billboards flooded with ads of their products. And remember, these ads didn't look like your typical beer commercial. They looked like nightclubs, fast cuts, expensive looking tastes, sweet, fizzy, fashionable. A life of excellence shown to millions of impressionable young people. Unsurprisingly, it didn't take people long to notice that a lot of underage people were getting trashed on Alcopops. Government officials got involved and implemented changes to the law. Special taxes were introduced to hike up the cost of Alcopops to curb the overall sales. In places like Germany, they increased taxes on these types of products by nearly double. And in 2008, Australia introduced a bill that would raise the tax rate to 70%. According to the National Library of Medicine, a 2008 report on the impact of taxes on alcohol consumption concluded that the tax increases did see a drop in overall sales for ready-to-drink beverages. Sales in all other categories rose. So essentially, the taxes did initially affect the sales of Alcopops, but it really didn't change the behaviors of alcohol consumption. So was the moral panic over Alcopops really justified? Perhaps. It could just be another case of people blaming unfamiliar things for systemic issues. But even if the underlying issue wasn't addressed, the public's opinions on Alcopops had been irreversibly altered. Alcopops became the drink you had with your friends in high school because your palate wasn't ready for Coors Banquet yet. If you were over 19, drinking a sugary, candy-looking malt beverage was a little embarrassing, especially if you were a guy, since it also had the stigma of being a girl's drink. Which brings us to talking about one of the most viral drinking games of the early 2010s. Around 2010, a trend kicked off at college campuses in the southern United States. People would hide bottles of Smirnoff Ice in unlikely places, and whoever stumbled across one had to drop to one knee and chug the whole bottle. The game was called Bros Icing Bros, but it is now more commonly known as Icing. Born in a fraternity, played between guys, and built entirely on the premise that being handed a Smirnoff Ice was a humiliation. 15 years later, people are still dropping to one knee for that special moment where they get a sip on a warm bottle of malt liquor. And now that brings us to the present. Where are Alcopops today? Well, despite everything, they're making a quiet comeback. If you're ever on social media, you may have noticed the growing trend of certain alcoholic drinks featured in various reels or challenges. And the ones I'm referring to are, of course, Buzzball and Four Loko. These are both sugary, pre-made drinks that fit the Alcopop category, but of course they got their own, unique characteristics. For one, the alcohol content is way higher than what you would see in a Bacardi Breezer. Buzzballs pack a whopping 13.5% ABV, and a Four Loko can have anywhere between 8 and 14%. They also have some pretty interesting packaging designs. Buzzball comes in this weird round container. The small one kind of looks like a Pokeball, and the big one kind of looks like a potion you'd buy from your local potion seller.
You can't handle my strongest potions. You better go to a seller that sells weaker potions.
For Locos, it kind of just looks like an energy drink that you'd buy at a gas station, which is fitting because this alcoholic beverage used to contain a shitload of caffeine. But the drink was reformulated in 2010 after widespread safety concerns and the threat of a ban by the FDA. It seems like no matter what generation, it always seems like Alcopop continues to stir up controversy. But no matter what officials or the general populace thinks about these drinks, they seem to shrug off any bad publicity that may be thrown their way. Even when it looks like the industry is down on its knees, Alcopops keep on chugging along as if nothing is happening. Which is why I'm officially declaring Alcopops as the official drink for chuds. So next time you're by the pool, hanging out with your friends, maybe crack open a few hard lemonades together and take it easy. And don't worry about what's gonna happen tomorrow because you're just gonna be spending the rest of the day regretting yesterday's decisions.